So I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion about cameras these days and how good they're actually getting. And obviously this camera isn't one of the best cameras. This is actually on a camcorder that I bought off Amazon for like 25 US, stupidly cheap. The image doesn't look great, but it has its place. But I just wanted to talk about just cameras in general now in 2024 and how good they've come and how similar they are actually all, coming to be. And we'll switch it over to a different Sony camera. And this is the Nex 5R, which is the pre-A6000 series. So this is very old. We're looking at almost 14 to 15 years old now. And you can see the technology is starting to increase and get a little bit better as the years go on. But then we'll switch over to the FX30, and obviously you can see there is a clear difference when it comes to image quality. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to have this discussion today, is that cameras these days are fantastic. And making that video about my experience with the FX30 for the last 18 months just really got me thinking. It's just like, how can we really complain about these cameras? They are absolutely fantastic. If you really truly know how to utilize these tools in your specific craft, you can make anything look good. Literally, you can make anything look good. It's incredible. But that's what I wanted to talk about. Some of the cameras, when they come down to just age, 5-10 years ago, that's when technology has sort of developed a little bit more on from that, especially, now that most cameras have 10-bit codec and 4K quality, there's a pretty significant difference between 10-bit and 8-bit and 4K and 1080p when it comes to some of these older cameras. And this is probably one of the biggest things that a lot of people just really need to take a step back and have a think, like, do I really actually need to upgrade my camera? Or is the camera that I got completely good enough and sufficient for what I'm actually doing? Do I actually really need the Red Komodo X? Do I really need a Sony Venice? Do I really need the Sony Burano? The Blackmagic Pixis camera? Do I really need these cameras? But one of the things a lot of people need to think about as well is that it comes down to motivation. If you actually have a brand new camera, sometimes that brand new camera can actually get you motivated to go out and shoot and capture something. When I got my Red Komodo X, I was super motivated to make short films again. And I really wanted to push myself in those kind of boundaries and, just breaking past that barrier of making something for myself, getting creative and doing something for myself rather than just gear reviews, client work, freelance stuff, all those kind of things. And then you sort of miss out on creating stuff for yourself. And that's what the Red Komodo X did for me. I really wanted to get out and just have fun. Do what I wanted to do whatever I wanted to do, and just get out and start shooting stuff. And sometimes when it comes to new purchases with cameras, if that's what gets you out to shoot, that's great. That is an absolute win for a lot of people. And at the end of the day, with that justification, it doesn't really have to be, do I actually need this camera? It's kind of like, will this camera actually get me out and doing what I love the most? So getting cameras for a specialized task like this is pretty much me driving, and you're gonna need some pretty high dynamic range. As you can see, the sky is most likely clipped because it is actually becoming a little bit dusk. So it's pretty dark here. I would have to expose for this scene right here and try and obviously not blow out the sky as much as I could, but unfortunately, that just comes down to the camera's capabilities of actually recording. The only other way around this is actually getting light and trying to light inside the cabin and exposing for the highlights and trying to bring it down as much as possible. But this is where it comes down to the situation where you may actually need a camera that specializes in really high dynamic range situations, like an ARRI Alexa 35 that has 17 stops of dynamic range. It is incredible when it comes to trying to keep up, with the highlights. But one thing also is that you don't actually have to buy that very specific camera, and this is trying to save you guys money. You could actually just hire that camera that has a high dynamic range or has one little thing that you need for the next project, and you could literally put this on the invoice and get the clients to pay for it. It really depends on the specialty of how special that camera is and what it actually does. But that is another option, and you don't have to buy every single piece of gear for only using it once or twice. Hiring it definitely is a fairly good option. And then you're probably thinking, well, all cameras aren't the same, because what if I'm a wedding videographer, event videographer, I'm filming in low light situations? Obviously this FX30 is just not handling this no light situation very well. I'm at ISO 6400 and it's going to be grainy. But this is probably where you would decide to choose a camera for your particular situation, especially if you are doing weddings consistently, if you are doing event videography consistently. The Sony a7S III, the FX3, the FX6, or even the ZV-E1 is going to get you there, because it's got that 12,800, which is the second base, and it is super clean, but obviously isn't ideal. There is no real key light, but if you are in that run and gun situation, you don't have full control of the lights, wedding videography, any kind of event videography, and you need just a solid low light performing camera, then obviously that's where you need that specialized tool. And that's where the cameras do actually differ, and you may actually have to buy that camera specifically if you do this job all the time. And I guess that's where we have to talk about specialized tools, because not every camera is going to be the same in this kind of scenario. And now you're thinking, wait a minute, Jason, you've been telling us this whole video that you don't really need to upgrade and buy all the latest and greatest, and now you're kind of telling us you kind of do need to buy the latest and greatest. Well, not necessarily. Like I said, if you are a wedding videographer, if you do a very specific job professionally and get paid for it, you're probably going to need that specialized tool. Like, that is one of the biggest reasons why I invested in the FX6 2 or 3 years ago. Whenever that was released, I invested in it because this camera just does absolutely everything when it comes to my corporate work, and even some of my commercials as well. So this thing is just, it has what I need it to have. It's got SDI out, HDMI out, it's got the internal ND filters, and obviously time code, all the professional features that I actually need in those professional jobs. This is why I've actually bought this. You have to remember that we are filmmakers, we are creators, we're artists. We need to have certain tools to create our art, and this one helps me create my art. I probably couldn't do what I do with this with the FX30. It is what it is. It just doesn't have as much as the FX6 has, and that's obviously why the price is so much more. This is catered towards a very particular audience, whereas the FX30, the A7 IV is catered towards a slightly different demographic. One of the biggest reasons why I wanted to have this chat today is that there's been comments in my comment section with specific cameras, and people are like, oh no, that camera's not great, you need to get this. Well, it's like, I don't need to get anything. Like the F5 Mark II X, whatever it is it's called, is a great camera. I understand it's a great camera, but I don't need it. I've literally got the tools that I need in my situation, and that suits me perfectly fine. I've got a whole bunch of E-mount glass, 0L mount glass, that I can't just switch over and start investing in a whole different system. But if I did actually need that camera for a very particular job for some reason, open gate, I don't know, I would get it and then adapt some glass. But these are the decisions that we have to make, and we just don't need to sort of jump ship and go, hey, I'm going to go this system now, or I'm going to go this system now. These cameras are so similar, ridiculously similar, but it just comes down to those specialty features that we may need in our situation to be able to do our work or create our art. And this is where we're going to circle right back to the start and really talk about what the whole point of this video actually is. And that is pretty much just, you don't need the latest and greatest camera, specifically if you already have a camera that can do 90% of the stuff that this other camera has. It really does come down to, do you actually need it? There's a difference between needs and wants. And this is where, you really need to sit down and say, hey, look, I don't actually need this. I actually really want it, but there's nothing wrong, like I said, with buying that new camera if you want it, if you have expendable money, if you want to try and get out and create more, and you're feeling blah, the camera system you're not using is just not doing you justice, and buying this new camera might actually get you motivated. I mean, that's a plus. That really is a plus. I can't just sit here and say, don't buy all this new gear when I am a very heavy gear-based channel. I love talking about gear, don't get me wrong, but I always like to tell you guys what the pros and cons are with some of the specific gear, but then also tell you guys that, you know, maybe you don't necessarily need this one. You should actually probably consider, you know, XYZ instead. So yeah, bit of a long-winded video, but I really hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up, that would be amazing. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'm going to be making more motivational videos, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, see you guys in the next one. Let's get it.